most scholars, educators, community activists, not only in Los Angeles, globally, would categorize the state of Armenian language education as a state in decline. Most communities are facing very similar challenges of children going through years of Armenian schooling and yet coming out with proficiency that they deem as not parallel to what the expectations were. For example, specifically, let's talk about the Los Angeles community. The way Armenian schools function, the way they teach Armenian language is the way they taught it in the Middle Eastern communities, because most of our teachers are exports from the Middle East. In the Middle East, Armenian was taught as a first language, and I mean first in order of acquisition and first in terms of proficiency as a native language. That's no longer the case for the student body. For the student body of most Armenian schools now in LA are the children of alumni. They are no longer Armenian dominant. Often they are exposed to both Armenian and English from birth. And teaching Armenian as a native language or as a dominant language is unfair and not productive. Many teachers in Armenian institutions are teaching Armenian, one, as a native language, two, using the same methods and approaches that they used in their former host country. Well, that's obviously not going to be a good match. When these children spend 75-80% of their day exposed to instructional approaches that are very different, and of course, when you ask children, they'll say, the books in my English class are more colorful. The activities we do in my English class are more fun. Whereas you go to the Armenian class and they have, carbon copies, black and white copies, and rote memorization and reading. They are very, very smart and they notice the differences. So we need to revamp the instructional approaches. And by revamp, I'm not even saying it's not about making it more attractive. It's literally just making it more suitable. These kids are heritage language speakers, and their pedagogical needs are very unique and very different, both from native speakers and from foreign language speakers. And there has been a lot of research done on how to approach language instruction for this particular group of learners. Ideally, if language instruction was reformed in Armenian schools, a couple of things in my dream world would happen. One, we would all acknowledge that Armenian will function as a second language. We don't live in a fairy tale world. Armenian is never going to be the first language in terms of dominance. Armenian is always going to function in a diasporic setting as a second language. We should accept that. But what will be its function as a second language? Will it remain a kitchen language, or will we be able to produce writers and editors and school teachers and playwrights in Armenian, which we've done for so long in a diasporic setting? So ideally, Armenian would be enhanced in its status as a second language, removed from the domains of the home and granted a few additional domains at least, so that children don't have this strict compartmentalization of Armenian only for Armenian things and English for the rest of the world, so that a child feels comfortable writing a poem in Armenian or creating. This is, I think, very, very important, so that Armenian doesn't become a language of repetition and rote memorization, but becomes a language of creation, so that children can play with it, manipulate it, shape it, be silly with it. In a very ironic twist, Armenian schools are often complicit in lowering the status of Armenian, because Armenian is limited to the walls of the Armenian language classroom. Armenian is used for Armenian language, for religion, and for history. Armenian is not used for math. Armenian is not used for social studies, for geography, for any other content instruction. So 2 elementary schools in Glendale, public elementary schools, have an Armenian immersion program, which means 50% of the day is in Armenian. Instruction, half of the day is in Armenian, and it's content instruction, not just Armenian for Armenian language, but if the first half of the day this month is in Armenian, and in that first half we need to cover math and social studies, we do it in Armenian. This is what helps divide the barriers of linguistic compartmentalization when the child accesses multiple domains in Armenian. The immersion program in Glendale Unified School District is actually a dual immersion program, where half the class are heritage speakers of Armenian and half the class are non. So 50% of the population are non-Armenian students who are going through an immersion program in Armenian, which is, again, another very interesting development in, contributing to speakers of Armenian, whether they're of Armenian extraction or not. And just like other immersion programs all over the country, the students in the immersion programs will outperform their monolingual peers, not only in Armenian or whatever language they're studying, but in English and in math. Typically by 4th grade, they will outperform their monolingual peers across the board on all of the exams. This is a very, very interesting initiative that started that I think is a phenomenal opportunity, and that's something that's going in the right direction in terms of heritage language development. Just in our Los Angeles community, we have 3 task forces working on promoting Armenian education, on reforming Armenian language instruction, and promoting Armenian language use. That's very positive and gives me a lot of hope. The work that the Gulbenkian Foundation is doing, or a number of other organizations are doing. And the important thing is, one, there's awareness. We've all come to realize that this is something important that we have to focus on. And 2, that we have a vision and a mission that we've all bought into, that we all agree is the way for the future, that we all understand Armenian language is such an important and valuable constituent of Armenian identity, and that it should be positioned as a source of enrichment, as a source of development, and not one of obligation or one of duty. So in general, I'm very hopeful with the direction of things right now. And again, lots of good research to come on all of these new initiatives.